Hello and thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Lydia and I am a fertility educator, which means I teach you how to track things like ovulation and track your period so that you are able to recognize problems in your cycle and know if you're ovulating or not. Ultimately, my job is to help you better understand your body. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you about basal body temperature. I really like this as a first step for anyone who's interested in a fertility awareness method, but they don't know where to start. Taking your temperature is pretty simple, pretty cheap. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to give you some general information, starting with the thermometer itself. So there are multiple different ways that you could go in different directions, more expensive thermometers or a cheaper thermometer. The cheapest thermometer option is going to be about $15. You could probably order one online from Amazon or something like that, or you could go to your local CVS. The big thing is you just want to make sure that it's sensitive enough to use to track your basal body temperature. We're looking for very, very small changes, so you need it to read to the 100th decimal place. Now, there are multiple different types of thermometers. I personally use the Daisy, but I'm not using it for the algorithm. There's different ones like the Daisy that will give you a color, green if you're safe, red if you're not. I don't use it for the algorithm. I definitely don't recommend things like natural cycle just because the whole point of this is for you to better understand your body. Algorithms can fail you. You want to understand what's going on. So beyond that, there are wearable thermometers, which are really great if you don't wake up at the same time every day, which we're going to get into. One wearable thermometer that I would recommend is the Temp Drop. It's one that you wear on your arm. I've just heard a lot of good things about it, and I'm actually in the process. At some point I do want to invest in one. It's just not the cheapest. I think it's around the $150 range. I do have a discount code for that if you would like to get 15% off. You can find that in the description of this video. So now that you know a couple of your different options, go ahead and order or buy your thermometer. I definitely recommend just getting a cheap, thermometer from your local CVS or something like that to get started. Once you have your thermometer, you're also going to want a way to keep track of your temperatures. So I personally really like tracking my temperatures and all of my information on paper. You can see my chart here. I have all kinds of information down here. I track cervical fluid. And then the graph here is where I track my temperatures. This allows me to track them on the scale that I want to track, so I can see those slight fluctuations really well. Now, you can also do this in an app. You just want to be careful because some apps will show up a little bit weird because they don't have those slight fluctuations. But if you do want to use an app, I would recommend either Read Your Body or Kindara. Read Your Body is an app that you have to pay for. Kindara is a free app. Both are great apps, and I would recommend either one of them. Now that you have your thermometer and you have a way to keep track of your information, let's talk first a little bit about some of the basics that you need to know before you start taking your temperature. First of all, your basal body temperature is your resting temperature. This is the temperature that your body gets down to at rest. This is important to know because we need to know this in order to know when the best time is to take this temperature. You would not be able to get your basal body temperature if you take it just in the middle of the day, maybe after you go on a walk or something. That's not going to be a reflection of your basal body temperature. Because of this, when you are using an oral thermometer, you're going to want to take it as soon as you wake up in the morning, before you talk, before you move, before you sit up, before you take a drink of water, because you want it to be an accurate reflection. And once again, this is picking up really, really slight fluctuations. So any big changes are going to show up and aren't necessarily going to reflect a hormonal change. So this is just something that's good to know. Now, if you're wearing a wearable thermometer, it's actually going to find your lowest temperature throughout the night. That's something that Temp Drop does. So that's really, really helpful if you have a hard time keeping a consistent schedule. Maybe you have a newborn baby, maybe you have a crazy work schedule. Whatever it is, it's really hard for some people to keep a similar sleep schedule, get up within about the same hour every day, because that's something you're going to want to do when you are taking your temperature orally. you're going to need to have a consistent sleep pattern because, like I said, any little thing is going to affect your temperature. So sleeping for 3 hours one night and 10 hours the next, there's going to be a fluctuation, and it's not just going to be because of a hormonal change. So more importantly than just getting up at 8 a.m. instead of 7 a.m., you want to be getting the same amount of hours of sleep. This is something that I don't hear talked about a lot, but that's something that I noticed, where before I was focusing on waking up at exactly like 6 a.m. every morning, but I was still seeing those fluctuations because I wasn't going to bed at the same time every night. So if possible, try to hit within an hour of the same amount of sleep every single night so that you get an accurate reflection of your temperature. This is something that's hard for a lot of people, so just keep in mind that basal body temperature might not be a tool that's going to work for you if the season of your life is not going to be friendly for taking basal body temperature. The reason that basal body temperature is a tool that we can even use to track our cycle is because the hormone progesterone raises our body temperature. It has a warming effect on the body. Now, right after ovulation, progesterone rises because once ovulation occurs and our follicle pops open, releases the egg, that follicle transforms into the corpus luteum. This corpus luteum is what produces progesterone. So progesterone is not being produced before ovulation occurs. Once ovulation has occurred and the corpus luteum is formed, it starts producing progesterone. Progesterone then has a warming effect on our body, so we see our basal body temperatures rise and stay elevated until our period starts, or maybe the day before our period starts, because our corpus luteum dies off, progesterone drops because of that, and our uterine lining is then triggered to shed and cause our period to start. So this is why we're able to even use our basal body temperature as a tool to know what's going on hormonally. So because of this, it might make sense that you could see a shift in your basal body temperature pattern. You're going to see lower temperatures at the beginning of your cycle, and then you're going to see higher temperatures in that second half of your cycle after ovulation has occurred. You can also use basal body temperature as a tool to see maybe progesterone isn't rising at the rate that we want it to, or it's potentially dropping too soon. It's not an exact measurement of our progesterone levels, but we're able to see what could be going on with our basal body temperatures. Just keep in mind, this is just one tool. And because our temperature doesn't rise or change until after ovulation has occurred, we can't use this as our only method of avoiding pregnancy if that's your goal. This is a great way of double checking to make sure that you have in fact ovulated, to know that you are safe during that part of your cycle, but it should not be the only tool that you use, because you're not going to know that you've entered your fertile window with just using your temperature. You're going to want to use another method. I highly recommend understanding cervical fluid patterns and the different types of cervical fluid. So that's just something I want you to keep in mind, and that's why I personally don't recommend methods like natural cycles or like using just the daisy. Another thing to keep in mind, just when it comes to tips and tricks of actually taking your temperature, you are going to want to take your temperature in the same place of your mouth every single morning as well. So I put it underneath my tongue and pretty much as far as I can go under my tongue, the same side of my tongue. You want to just keep it as consistent as possible. That's the biggest thing when it comes to basal body temperature. Just be super, super consistent, so that any changes you see are more than likely changes because of hormonal changes and not because of lifestyle changes. And that brings up another topic. If you, for instance, have a fever, then you don't have to take your basal body temperature. You can though if you want to. Just make a note of it on either your app or your paper that you had a fever. Note things like that. If you slept for a really, really short time, or you had really disturbed sleep, if you drank alcohol the night before, any of these kinds of things can affect our basal body temperature, so we want to note that down. That also brings up another point. We want to make sure we're sleeping for more than 4 hours to really get an accurate basal body temperature. If you're not sleeping for that long at a time, then oral testing might not be the best for you. You might need to use a wearable thermometer, or basal body temperature in general might not be a helpful tool. Now that you know some of the specifics on how to get started, let me show you how you're going to chart your temperatures and how you're going to make sense of them. Before I get into this, I just want to tell you a tool that I really appreciated, and that is the book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility. This is what it looks like. It's a really good book. It's been around for a while, and anyone who uses fertility awareness methods have probably started with this book. There's so much information in it. It's very, very good. I recommend this as a first step, but I definitely recommend learning a fertility awareness method from a fertility educator like myself. You're able to just learn the method better, have a little bit more reassurance, and if you have any specific questions, because there's all kinds of things that can come up, it can be helpful to have an educator walk you through that. I'm once again going to show you my own chart. Let's look at this together as I walk you through how you're going to chart your temperatures and how to look for that temperature shift. I do offer a copy of this if you work with me one-on-one. So as you can see along here, I have temperatures. This is Fahrenheit. I do have a Celsius version as well. You can see it changes to the 10th degree. If it's a bigger jump than that, it's really hard to see those slight variations. Something that you're going to notice at the very beginning of your cycle, typically during your period, there's going to be some fluctuations. Your temperature might be slightly high. This is partially due to residual progesterone. So you're still going to have some progesterone from your previous cycle. So your temperatures might be higher than normal. They might fluctuate a lot. We're not paying a ton of close attention to what's going on during the beginning of our cycle. Now, as your cycle goes on, you might notice your temperatures dropping and staying lower. Like, as you can see, these 3 days, it's in that 96 degree range, 96.7, 96.8. That's fairly low. And then, as you can see, this is the day I ovulated, which was quite low. And the next day, look at that jump. 96.8 to 97.6. Pretty close to a whole degree of a jump. So that was a pretty obvious shift, but I didn't just assume I ovulated just from my temperature increasing that much, because what if I slept in that day? There could be all kinds of things that could affect that. However, once I saw that change, and based off of all my other symptoms, which made me guess that I ovulated that day, I was able to count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. So you look back over the past 6 days from when your temperature rises, and you're going to find the highest one, which for me was that very first day, 6 days back. That day, my temperature, rounded to the 10th decimal, was 97.2. So I went to a 10th of a decimal above that, and I created my cover line there. You're going to create your cover line using, again, that highest temperature from the 6 days previous, and you're going to bump it up a 10th of a degree above that temperature, and that is your cover line. So what you're going to be looking for is for your temperatures to go above that cover line and stay above it for at least 3 days. Once it's been 3 days, you can confirm, like here we can see 1, 2, 3. That was 3 days above the cover line. We can confirm ovulation did in fact happen. Now, because of all the other things that I track, I was quite confident that I had in fact ovulated. But if you're only using temperature during this part of your cycle and you're trying to avoid pregnancy, you would definitely want to give those 3 days being above the cover line to make sure you ovulated and you would be safe. But you can see here in this graph how we've got lower temperatures and then higher temperatures. So you can see that pattern. It's going to be hard to see though when you are in the midst of it. When I was over here, I might have felt kind of confused with all of the fluctuations. So it's not used as a tool to just be like, oh, this is happening this day, so I definitely ovulated. It's used as a tool to take and kind of look back on, hence, looking back 6 days. We're seeing the trends. We're looking at, okay, big picture. I can see lower temperatures here. I can see higher temperatures here. We can also see my temperature started dropping here. Very, very normal to see it drop before your period starts. You'll typically see a drop, sometimes a pretty big drop on the last day of your cycle. And it's also a really helpful tool to help you know that your period is coming, especially if you have irregular cycles. Temperature can be really helpful for that. So that is kind of just a little tour of my own chart. and I hope this was helpful for you to kind of see it and work through it together. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you. If there's any additional information that you would like about this, or just any comments you have, I would love to hear your comments. I really appreciate each and every one. I want to get the information out to you that you need, so definitely let me know if you have any ideas for a video. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.